Broadcasting from the heart of the nation, the next generation in conservative talk radio. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Why, yes, it is. Darn right. What's up? Welcome into it. It is a Wednesday, the greatest day of the entire week, my friends. We continue to set that tone all throughout the week, which is what we do. Bringing that intensity, bringing that excitement, which is what we're here for each and every day. Welcome into it. It is the Voice of Reason. My name's Andy Hoosier, broadcasting right here out of Wichita, Kansas on our flagship station, but we are all over the country. So many great radio stations all over the place. Radio, TV, live streaming, and podcasting. However you watch or listen to the show.
Do it live!
Welcome aboard, your Millennial General, reporting for duty like we do every single day. Another wild day in the news for sure. Donald Trump holding his first cabinet meeting today with all of his new cabinet members and secretaries. That was pretty awesome. We had the federal budget resolution going through the House yesterday. That was pretty wild. We'll cover all that and more. Plus, John O'Connor, author of the book PostGate. We've had him on the show before many times. We're going to get him on to talk about the ongoing attempt with DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, and Donald Trump to clean up the deep state out of Washington, D.C., which the media Democrats continue to lose their minds over.
We're all going to die because of you!
And in fact, I wanted to play it yesterday. I didn't get a chance to do it, but the montage of the media right now just going crazy over the fact that how influential Doge and Elon Musk is right now in the necessity of what we need to have at the federal level.
The president has put Elon Musk into a position of authority to do damage to our government.
This is not about efficiency. This is about loyalty. This is about having Trump and Musk put in the people that are going to be beholden to them so that they can push forward on their corrupt agenda.
Elon Musk has been lying through his teeth to the American people time and time again.
It's completely inhumane what he's doing, by the way. No compassion, no thought about these people that are working hard to deliver services. And quite frankly, it's crazy that this is his approach.
This is so crazy. These are government employees that have been cushioning through their life, just going through the grind, working those overtime hours like all those manufacturing workers. These are the people that have sacrificed their lives for a federal government job with a nice hefty government pension that sit there and are really not efficient because the ongoing joke that everybody agrees with is that it's good enough for government work. Whatever. These are the people that have put their lives on the line to work behind a desk for the federal government. How dare you continue to let people go? Which, by the way, apparently, according to the Trump administration, they plan on even deeper cuts of laying more federal workers off by the middle of the month of March. So now that we are officially a month and a few days into the Trump administration, by 2 months in, by March 20th, March 15th, 20th-ish, we're going to have even deeper cuts by cutting the size of the federal government. I think that's kind of okay. I'm all right with that. And then to top it all off, we go into today's meeting that Donald Trump had with the cabinet members. Now, the Department of Government Efficiency doesn't technically have a secretary there or a cabinet member or a member of the Trump cabinet at all for the executive branch. And just to rub it in, consciously, subconsciously, not sure how Trump planned it, right out of the gate after he introduces everyone, he has a beautiful a prayer that was done by, who was it, the Department of Housing and Urban Development? Is that who it was? I forget who did the prayer. It was really greatly done. And then he goes right into it. Not a waste of time before talking to Marco Rubio, before talking to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., before talking to the Department of Commerce. None of it. He goes right to Elon. Elon, government efficiency, cutting spending. What do you got for us? Give us an update, brother.
The interest rates, just the interest on the national debt now exceeds the Defense Department spending. We spend a lot on the Defense Department, but we're spending like over $1 trillion on interest. If this continues, the country will become de facto bankrupt. It's not an optional thing. It is an essential thing.
It is an essential thing. And he went on and gave a nice update about what they've been doing, the IT work that he's working on. He shows up again in his black MAGA hat, in his IT shirt for the White House. I love it. The ongoing trolling. Democrats losing their minds, and we're getting done what needs to get done. Here's what's nice about it. And I want to, for those that don't know, and those even in the Wichita area where I'm based out of, you may not have even been aware of this event that happened last night, and there's a reason for that. I'm not going to get into it, but it was a nice event last night. But Dinesh D'Souza, the documentary filmmaker, political advocate, he was in Wichita last night. Yeah, did you know that?
Say what?
I know. And I had the pleasure to attend the dinner and go see him speak last night. And it goes right into what he's doing with Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, and Elon Musk. We got to meet Dinesh. He was a wonderful individual. I have not shared the photos online. I will, so that way you can see. But it was a really great event. It was a really great banquet. We appreciate it very much. The speech, however, Dinesh really did make you think. And he went, I'm kind of summarizing a little bit of what he spoke about last night, because I think it's really appropriate with what's going on and what we're seeing under the Trump administration today, who he chose for his cabinet picks, and what Doge is actually doing. He went into the argument, Dinesh did, during his speech last night, regarding the usefulness of the Republican Party and our mindset on how we view the Democrat Party and how we should properly respond to them. And he essentially made the case that we still live under this mindset that, like under the Jimmy Carter era back in the 70s, that Democrats were just ill-willed. They had good intentions, but just kind of went about things the wrong way. And if we could only educate them that there was a more efficient way of making America better, that that's what we need to do. And that's why we try to engage them. We try to debate with them. We try to dialogue with them and move us in the right, thinking that there's still this mindset of us generally moving in the same direction. When in all reality, essentially, the shift happened under the Clinton administration, the Obama administration for sure. That's not the case. They know exactly what they're doing, and they see us as the useful idiots. And even if they lose elections, that we are the ones that try to take the higher ground, that don't stoop to their level. And all the weaponization of a federal government that the Obama administration especially had done through the Department of Justice, the ones that went after Trump, that tried to destroy him, the ones that used this bureaucratic fourth branch of government, this shadow government, they have weaponized it at such a deep level, aka the deep state, that they know that when Republicans get into power, we're not going to do the same thing to them as they've done to us, because we've openly said that we're not going to weaponize the government against Democrats for a political opponent, because that's not the role of government. And because we hold ourselves to a higher standard than what Democrats have done to Donald Trump, all of these supporters, and so on and so forth. The difference, however, is that Donald Trump is changing that narrative by playing the dirty games that they've done, not by weaponizing the government against them, but exposing the corruption that they've done by weeding out the really low-ranking public officials at the federal level, by laying off so many public workers that continue that grind to promote that agenda. Because in the past, well, if we don't like what one agency is doing, we'll just get rid of the secretary, we'll put in a new secretary, and we'll just leave it at that. But there's thousands of federal government workers underneath them in that agency that continue to crank out the political agenda that they want to. It goes back to Franklin D. Roosevelt with saying that, the politician comes and goes, the political pendulum ebbs and flows. But if we want true socialism, you have to have that deep state. You have to have that fourth branch of government that's going to continue to crank along, taking more regulation, taking more individual rights, collecting more government power, collecting the centralization of influence and power at the federal level away from the private sector, to where when the politicians coming and going, they can only do so much. It's the deep state that continues to crank it out. And that's been the mindset for a long time. The hiccup, and this is me talking now, that's not Dinesh, the hiccup I think that started was when Bernie Sanders ran for president the last time and said that his entire goal was to finally complete the FDR agenda by making us a pure socialist nation. And they got a little anxious. They got a little testy. They got a little impatient, and it kind of backfired on them, which is what we see today, because now the agenda that they thought they had under wraps, no one was paying attention to. Remember these aren't the joy you're looking for. They now exposed it, and we're aware of what's going on. And now Donald Trump came in and is exposing all of it to show how corrupt the federal government has been for a very long time. And that's not good for them. In fact, that's a major failure on their end. And now we're starting to rid it. And Donald Trump's doing something that's never been done before, which is go into administrative states and cut not just the secretaries, not just the high-level officials, but going deep into the ranks to get rid of these federal employees that have had an agenda for a very long time. Dinesh mentioned it last night. It was a beautiful speech that he made, and it really drives home what Trump is doing, to where, as Republicans, we may feel just a little bit uncomfortable of what's going on, watching, wow, he's really shaking things up. Most of us are like, hell yeah, let's do it, baby. Come on, let's get her done. We're enjoying this. Others may be a little bit on the fence of, ooh, maybe we've pushed the envelope a little bit too far. But I'm telling you, this is necessary beyond what we can comprehend because of how deep this goes and how they continue to crank out this progressive agenda behind the scenes that we're not even aware of. And it's pretty wild. That being said, bringing it back to the cabinet meeting that we had today, Elon Musk gave a great update on Doge, talked about the importance of what they're doing. Trump makes a statement that we're going to cut even deeper into the federal employees by the middle of March because that's the entire goal. They're going to continue to do their audits. Each agency, each department going to be doing their audits on the workers to see whether they're actually doing their jobs or not. And then it leads to the issue of immigration.
What's trending today?
Now, we had a budget conversation yesterday. We'll get to that in just a minute with the Congress voting on their budget resolution in the House of Representatives. What does that mean? Because the argument is, you're going to cut my Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. And you know that's not going to be the case. It's a complete lie. And that's what they always jump to whenever we do any type of cuts at the federal level within a budget proposal is, oh my gosh, people are going to die in the streets. And you know...
We're all going to die because of you!
You know that's not true. You know that's complete fabrication and just a politicalized attack, a smear campaign from the media because they want the biggest government possible. We know that's not going to be the case. Donald Trump said it over and over. We're not going to cut these social programs. We're going to make sure there's no fraud in them. And apparently there's close to $2 trillion in fraudulent spending in Medicare alone because, like we mentioned yesterday, it's an agency or a program you're not allowed to look at. It grows exponentially. It just grows on its own. You can't reform it. You can't touch it. You can't change it. And oh, by the way, these social programs are well above 60% of the entire federal budget, and we're just going to let them grow. But you can't address them. And guess what we're doing? We're doing the sinful act at the federal level. We're addressing it. And they don't like that. But then you go into an immigration debates and discussion. Do you remember, and I know this is hard because there's been so much going on since the last month since Trump took office. Do you remember when Elon Musk made a comment about bringing in workers for especially like the tech industry and bringing in visa workers as opposed to American workers to work on artificial intelligence and technology and really trying to hone in on the best people around the world to make sure that we have the best technology competing against other countries around the world? Remember that? And it was very controversial. How dare he not utilize American workers? How dare he? He's a foreigner bringing more foreigners into this country. We can't have something like that. These were Democrats and Republicans, by the way, that were making that argument. Well, apparently it wasn't just Elon Musk because the Department of Commerce during the cabinet meeting today made a really interesting statement regarding EB-5 visa programs.
So the EB-5 program, which has been around for many years, had investment of $1 million into projects in America. And those projects were often suspect. They didn't really work out. There wasn't any oversight of it.
Okay, first, before we go any further, if you're not familiar, and I know we got to take a break in just a minute, so we'll set it up for the next segment. The EB-5 program, if you're not aware, means that if you're a business owner that's a foreigner, you're able to get your permanent residency or your pathway to citizenship in the country by investing your business into the United States. That's hiring workers, that's bringing money into the country, growing the GDP, bringing the manufacturing or whatever industry it may be, hiring at least, I think the threshold's like 10 employees or something, and investing money into the country. And by default, by doing that, by stimulating the U.S. economy, then you get a visa or you get your permanent residency or on your step to citizenship. It's an interesting program. Trump wants to reform it and make some money.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. When reason meets radio. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Yes, it is. Welcome back into it. 24 minutes past the hour. So great to have you today on a midweek celebration. So the first cabinet meeting with Trump and his new appointees happening today. Talking to Elon Musk, who's not even a member of the cabinet, but just triggering the other side to the nth degree, which is so hilarious to watch. Then we had this interesting conversation. There was so much more to get to. Obviously, we're not going to get to all of it here because it was like an hour and a half, 2-hour meeting, whatever it was. But Howard Lutnick, who's the Secretary for the Department of Commerce, spoke about a new program, which it's not necessarily a new program, but a reformed vision for a program regarding immigration. And regarding the EB-5 program, where if you're a foreigner, you want to invest your business, if you're a business owner, you want to invest your business in the United States, it allows you for essentially a pathway to citizenship, allows you to have a green card or at least a permanent residency, but you have to meet certain thresholds. According to the website for the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, it allows you to make necessary investment in commercial enterprise in the U.S. if you plan to create and preserve 10 permanent full-time jobs for qualified U.S. workers. The program also is known to name the employment-based fifth preference visa that participants receive. So you hire U.S. workers, you invest your business here, and you can actually move here as well, bringing in the best of the best around the world, which is, you would think, what we would want, right? We want some type of high-profile immigrants to come here and invest in America, grow our economy, hire American workers, help the economy, boost the GDP. It's a win-win all around. Well, it's been kind of flailing for a while because apparently they don't have the right stipulations. Howard Lutnick, the Department of Commerce Secretary, made the comment of their proposal to reform this program and make it more lucrative for the nation.
And so for $1 million investment, you got a visa and then you came into the country and ended up with a green card. So it was poorly overseen, poorly executed. Then you had our border open where millions of people came through. So the idea is we will have a proper business. We will modify the EB-5 agreement. Christy and I are working on it together. For $5 million, they'll get a license from the Department of Commerce. Then they'll make a proper investment on the EB-5, right? And we think Scott and I will design the EB-5 investment model because Scott and I are the best people together to do that. So this is joint. This is exactly the Trump administration. We all work together. We work it out to be the best. And if we sell, just remember, 200,000, there's a line for EB-5 of 250,000 right now. 200,000 of these gold green cards is $1 trillion to pay down our debt. And that's why the president is doing it, because we are going to balance this budget and we are going to pay off the debt under President Trump.
So the Department of Commerce partnering with immigration, finding ways to pay down the debt, creating this golden green card of $1 trillion potentially if 200,000 individuals invest their business into the U.S., hire workers, grow the GDP. This is not costing the United States anything. This is literally outside business wanting to come in here. Now, starts to make sense when Donald Trump's wanting to put tariffs on imported goods. Starts to make sense with the conversations he's having with the foreign leaders across the world with wanting to invest in the U.S. Seems to make sense now, right? And if we're getting $1 trillion alone just in that program, hiring employees, we're growing the economy, boosting the workforce, and we're paying off debt all at the same time. Dude, I mean, what's there to complain about? They said multiple times during this cabinet hearing, by the way, today, that all of these individuals, these secretaries working so closely together, it's starting to really reiterate the message that the media saying that DOJ is making it frustrating for different cabinets and different agencies and heads of departments to be able to communicate because of the mandates that he's sending down. They're starting to realize that it's just a bunch of what Joe Biden would say is malarkey. It's really not true. And that they're all working very closely together. They're planning on things to actually partner together for initiatives for things to grow, and we create incentives here in the United States. Kind of exciting. Could we actually see that on top of what the budget's going to do by cutting spending, cutting debts, at the same time we're moving in the right direction?
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier. Truth, reason, and common sense. This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
The spending bill that passed last night aims to cut $2 trillion.
Right.
Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking me that question. Okay? This will not be read my lips. It won't be read my lips anymore. We're not going to touch it. Now, we are going to look for fraud. I'm sure you're okay with that, like people that shouldn't be on, people that are illegal aliens and others, criminals in many cases, and that's with Social Security. We have a lot of people. You see that immediately when you see people that are 200 years old that are being sent checks for Social Security. Some of them are actually being sent checks, so we're tracing that down, and I have a feeling that Pam is going to do a very good job with that. But you have a lot of fraud. But no, I'm not. We're not doing anything on this.
I love how the question continues on, because that's the narrative from the media. If you're cutting the government and cutting the budget, then obviously you must be cutting social programs, allowing people to die in the streets.
We're all gonna die because of you!
And again, read my lips. It's not going to say it anymore. I'm not going to say this anymore. I'm surprised. It's stupid you have to still ask me that question. I love how Trump just takes it into his hands and just won't take that garbage anymore. By the way, real quick, as we get into our next guest here, the budget proposal, the budget resolution from the House did pass last night. I was honestly shocked. Only one Republican ended up faulting on it, Thomas Massie, which I'm a big fan of Thomas Massie, and I understand why, because he's concerned about the spending growing at the federal level, but it did pass 217 to 215, and here's what it does. It doesn't cut Medicare and Medicaid, doesn't cut Social Security. It is reforming or looking at it for the wasteful spending, but it does create $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. What? $4.5 trillion? Yeah, $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. No taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security. While the argument is from the other side, they're cutting it for millionaires and billionaires. I didn't know that that's what they were utilizing for their income, with tips and overtime and Social Security. At the same time, it cuts more than $2 trillion in spending over the next decade, so roughly $200 billion a year. Not necessarily a large amount on a yearly basis, but between that and what DOGE is doing, where they're looking at cutting the government spending near $2 trillion as well, we're on the way to start making some money and paying off this $36 trillion debt, which is absolutely amazing, and cutting out that government, fourth branch of government, that bureaucracy that is ingrained so deeply into our system, which leads us to
What's Trending Today.
Really happy to have on the program. It has been a while since we've chatted with this individual. He is the author of the latest book, PostGate, How the Washington Post Betrays here we go. My email froze up. Betrays covered up Watergate and began today's partisan advocacy journalism. He's also host of the Watergate PostGate podcast as well. It's Mr. John O'Connor. John, how are you, my friend?
Hey, great to be with you.
Yeah, it's good to have you back on. It's been a while. This cutting of the deep state. Donald Trump, during the cabinet meeting today, makes a statement that we're going to cut even deeper into federal employees by the middle of March. We're continuously doing the audit, DOGE cutting all their spending and canceling contracts. John, we might actually see an exposure of the deep state here. What do you think?
Well, I think we're seeing it already, aren't we?
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing how stupid things are. And yes, I think theoretically there could be a few people who get hurt by cuts. But on the other hand, the real question is, how much are we really spending for each legitimate person helped? And I say we're spending an awful lot of money on buildings in Washington, D.C., and employees making really good salaries for each penny that goes to somebody in need. And it's much better if that need is fulfilled closer to the person through his church or local organization or what have you, but not from Washington. And we're understanding that. And I think people are behind this. They see that really government itself is wasteful. I go to Washington, D.C., and I see these buildings that are now sprawling over from D.C., can't hold them all. They're into Virginia and Maryland. And you call it overhead. I mean, the overhead is just ridiculous. America doesn't get anything from the overhead.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact,
Yeah, well, and we're in the numbers of the trillions of dollars with a budget that's almost $7 trillion, $36 trillion in debt. I've been asking the same question, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but I haven't gotten a straight answer. John, how did we go from during early Obama administration, when we actually had a legitimate federal budget with 12 appropriation bills, we actually passed it appropriation bill by appropriation bill, where we capped ourselves at 20% spending compared to the GDP, to now omnibus packages where we're at 120% of the GDP in federal government spending. How in the world did we grow that massively, that quickly, and get in this much debt? Where in the world is that money going?
Well, first of all, a lot of it is going into little piggies on K Street in Washington. Even you hear these things about programs that are for Iraq or Afghanistan or Africa or something, that money's never going to those countries. They're going to some NGO on K Street who's dreaming up something and gets money in their pockets for doing a coloring book for Iraq, and maybe somebody in Iraq sees it, but they probably won't. And that's one of the ways it happens. You got to look back and you see, well, there was a fight against Obamacare, which all it was a glorified expansion of Medicaid.
Right.
Well, now what we've got is a ballooned Medicaid budget. That's all it is. The great Obama, all he did was say, increase Medicaid states and we'll bribe you for the first couple of years, and then you have this expenditure, and of course then the federal government covers so much of it. And we just try to do too much. Now, of course, Biden put it on steroids. And one of the things that people don't think about is that the moment he increased or decreased the ability to drill for fossil fuels and raised the price thereby, which he did, immediately, not only did the price of everything go up for the consumer, but the price of T-bills went up. They doubled, they tripled, really, and they went from about $300 billion a year in interest right before COVID that Trump administration was paying in interest to close to $1.2 trillion today. Think about that. We now have $900 billion a year in interest, more than we did during the salad days of Trump.
Wow.
And that alone right there will kill us. And there's been some good writing. I think I might have seen it in the Wall Street Journal lately, where a fellow wrote about how no society has ever done well when its debt service is higher than its military payments. Once you get into that, where you're paying more for your debt than you are paying for your soldiers and guns and self-defense, that society's on its way down.
Yeah.
And so we've got to arrest that, turn it around, and I think this is really, let's face it, this is a last-ditch effort. I mean, there's just really no tomorrow here. We got to do it today. And I think people realize that, and I'm very happy about the way the public has received this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right. Now let's talk about the corruption side of things. Obviously, you being an investigative journalist covering Watergate and other scandals going on at the federal level, we now have a team. We have Tulsi Gabbard with the intelligence director. We have Pam Bondi with Attorney General. We have Kash Patel with the FBI as the director. We now have Dan Bongino as the deputy director for the FBI under Kash Patel, exposing some of the politicized individuals that have been deeply embedded into these agencies to make sure what's been happening for years now is no longer going to happen. John, what do you think that we could expect when we start doing these investigations on people inside of these agencies that have been trying to sabotage their political opponents for decades?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to find. We're going to find this. Some of it came out during the Russiagate thing, but that was just one example, one gross example, and then the Biden laptop burying. We see that now. How much more often has that happened? I think what we'll find, for example, a tremendous amount of corruption that led to Ukraine being weakened. That story has not been told yet. It just didn't happen that Russia came in and just decided to take over Ukraine. It took a lot of effort by the Obama administration. Everything was fine during Trump, and then Biden on steroids put it. But basically, we've sold out Ukraine, and now people are yelling and screaming that Trump's trying to settle the thing.
Right.
But that kind of corruption, that's just an example a vivid example of what the harm is. Most of these organizations, you're going to find that there's tremendous corruption, and what's happening, nothing other than a waste of money.
Right.
I mean, think of these programs. And as we get into, for example, what Pete Buttigieg was doing in transportation, Trump was not saying that the traffic accident happened because there's a DEI person guiding the plane in.
Right.
What he's saying is a guy like that was so enamored by statistics that he couldn't go out and hire all these qualified white men, because if he did, his statistics would go down. He can't say, our hiring was 13% of, he'd have to say, it's 2% or 4%.
Yeah.
So what do? You sacrifice the nation's safety because you want statistics. Now, he's not going to admit that now, but why else would you not hire 1,000 qualified white males when you were understaffed and all that. The only answer is you still have plenty of room for DEI hires if you can find some good ones. And I'm not against DEI hires, I suppose, as long as if they're qualified. I guess they're qualified. I don't care. But they held off on that, and now the tower is understaffed on the night of this in question. Who knows what kind of fatigue they're under?
Yeah.
And of course, no attention is paid to the equipment and updating things and so forth. So what we're going to find is that's just one example. Every place we go, we're going to find corruption and politicization that takes people away from their main mission. We're finding that in the FBI, that so much of the FBI got diverted into spying on Catholics who went to Mass and people who actually spoke up at PTA meetings.
Exactly.
How ridiculous is that?
Yeah,
but name the Bureau.
Yeah, John, hang on the line.
We can talk about it.
Yeah, let's hang on the line. We got to take a hard break here. It's a John O'Connor, investigative journalist, author of PostGate. I want to continue that on what we're going to see with these investigations and with the transparency we're starting to see from the federal government. Stay here
with Andy Hoosier. America's safe space for common sense. This is the voice of reason with Andy Hoosier.
Darn right, yes it is. Welcome back into it. Trying to cram that 10 pounds of reason into that 5-pound bag. Trying to rebrand the millennial generation, one radio listener at a time, with our great radio stations all over the place. More jumping on, by the way, soon. I can't wait to make some of those announcements. We're talking with John O'Connor, author of the latest book, PostGate. Also, he is the host of the PostGate podcast, as well as an investigative journalist, talking about what really goes on behind the scenes in government and some of the scandalous activities the government's never involved in at all in any way, shape, or form, right? Yeah, there is that one. And I have to ask you, John, by the way, before we get back into what we're going to find with this investigation internally with the CIA, the FBI, these law enforcement agencies, I got to get your thoughts. The release of these documents that we're about to see with the JFK assassinations, with the Senator Kennedy assassination, with the MLK assassination, with the UFO and UAP disclosure that we're excited to see from Congresswoman Nancy Mace and Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, who's heading up this task force on the House side of things. I am so giddy to see even the Epstein list that Pam Bondi apparently says that she has on her desk right now. John, I am so excited to see all this information. Are we going to get the real info and the real scoop of what's going on internally from the government here?
Well, to a great degree, we will. And I was just thinking that when we were on break about some of the things we might find. For example, I think Lois Lerner, if you recall, the IRS was slow-walking conservative NGOs who were trying to, for instance, true the vote and do other things that were conservative in nature, and the Obama administration was slow-walking them and discriminating against them. Throughout the government, we're going to see a tremendous anti-conservative bias in which the whole government has been politicized. That's one of the things. Now, returning to what you're talking about, these documents of Trump that he's releasing, I think we're going to see a few dirty things in the Kennedy assassination, but I still think I agree with the author Gerald Posner that probably for Oswald himself was working alone, I believe, and certainly was not assassinating Kennedy from the right wing, as has been suggested, from the right side of the political spectrum, but rather, as is apparent, from the left. He tried to kill a conservative Army General, Edwin Walker, just a week before he actually got to Kennedy. But there are things in the FBI and CIA files, like, for instance, Howard Hunt from the CIA was in Dallas. I think the FBI is just going to look bad that they just didn't follow up on Oswald. But the CIA and what the CIA has been doing, I think it's going to make him look like bumbling idiots who are trying to get involved in stuff but don't do a very good job of getting involved.
Sure.
I believe it was the CIA that really messed up Ukraine in the past and led to all this. So we'll have some fun with it for sure. I am most giddy about what's going to be found out in these various government organizations. I think we're going to find tremendous scandals wherever we look. There hasn't been one we've looked at where that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And, what happens is anytime you have a deep state where everybody's a Democrat and Democrats only hire other Democrats and let it be known that they can get their promotions if they do all this skullduggery behind the scenes, and the notion that the media spreads that anytime you trash a conservative, it's a good thing. You're doing a good job. You're noble. You're not a bad person. You're on the right side. You're trashing a conservative.
Yeah.
I think we're going to find this, and we're going to find that our government has been working against us. And I think an awful lot of people have that general feeling in their gut, but kind of almost don't want to believe it because it would be too sickening to believe that it's really as bad as they suspect it is. And I think we're going to find it's worse than we ever suspected.
I'm right there with you. I mean, it almost comes to kind of like my stance on the UFO UIP issue. We know that you know. We know that you know that we know. And we just want you to admit the fact that this is what you've been doing, hiding things, doing these scandals, playing against us at the federal level, that you've weaponized yourselves against us. We just want you to admit it because we're already aware of it. We just need the justification and for you to admit it and apologize so we can move forward and start rebuilding ourselves. And I think that's where most Americans, that's where I'm at least. I believe that most Americans are that way as well. John, we're out of time, my friend. I could talk to you forever. So much great information. Go check it out. PostGate with his podcast, with his book, and so much more. Keep up this fight, my friend. Let's do it again real soon.
Will do, Andy. Take care.
Hey, you bet. Always a pleasure. John O'Connor, PostGate. Go check out the book and the podcast as well with his site. Until then, back at it again tomorrow for a pre-Friday celebration. More on the budget conversation. Where are we at with that one? The Doge cuts and so much more. It's the Voice of Reason. I'm Andy Hoosier. We'll see you on the radio. Bye.